We're starting right here on page 65. Esperanza and her mama and Hortensia, Alfonso, and Miguel are about to begin their journey to America. They're leaving from Zacatecas, Mexico. As we read, I want you to pay attention to the details about this train ride. Notice how it's different from Esperanza's first experience on a train with Miguel. Esperanza stood at the station in Zacatecas, tugging at the second-hand dress. It didn't fit properly and was the most awful yellow. And even though they had been out of the wagon for some hours, she still smelled like guavas. So I already noticed one difference, and that was what Esperanza was wearing on this train ride compared to what she was wearing on the train ride when she was younger. Stop and annotate that. It had taken them 2 days to arrive in Zacatecas, but finally that morning they left the wagon, hidden in a thicket of shrubs and trees, and walked into town. After the discomfort of the wagon, she was looking forward to the train. The locomotive arrived, pulling a line of cars and hissing and spewing steam, but they did not board the fancy car with the compartments and leather seats, or the dining car with the white linens. Instead, Alfonso led them to a car with rows of wooden benches, like church pews facing each other, already crowded with peasants. Because peasants is another word for poor people. So this is something that Esperanza is not used to. She's used to being with fancy, rich people in the fancy compartments with the leather seats. Trash littered the floor, and it reeked of rotting fruit and urine. A man with a small goat on his lap grinned at Esperanza, revealing no teeth. 3 barefoot children, 2 boys and a girl, crowded near their mother. Their legs were chalky with dust, their clothes were in tatters, and their hair was grimy. An old, frail beggar woman pushed by them to the back of the car, clutching a picture of Our Lady of Guadalupe. Her hand was outstretched for alms. So she's begging, she's looking for money. Esperanza had never been so close to so many peasants before. When she went to school, all of her friends were like her. When she went to town, she was escorted and hurried around any beggars. And the peasants always kept their distance. That was simply the way it was. She couldn't help but wonder if they would steal her things. Okay? So start thinking also while we're reading, do you think Esperanza is a good or bad person? Okay? What is she thinking about all these people that are different than her? Mama, said Esperanza, stopping in the doorway, we cannot travel in this car. It is not clean, and the people do not look trustworthy. Esperanza saw Miguel frown as he edged around her to sit down. Mama took her hand and guided her to an empty bench where Esperanza slid over next to the window. Papa would never have had us sit here, and Abuelita wouldn't approve, she said stubbornly. Mija, it is all we can afford, said Mama. We must make do. It is not easy for me either, but remember, we are going to a place that will be better than living with Tio Luis, and at least we will be together. The train pulled out and settled into a steady motion. Hortensia and Mama took out their crocheting. Mama was using a small hook and white cotton thread to make carpetas, lace doilies, to put under a lamp or a vase. She held up her work to Esperanza and smiled. Would you like to learn? Esperanza shook her head. Why did Mama bother crocheting lace? They had no vases or lamperas to put on top of them. Esperanza leaned her head against the window. She knew she did not belong here. She was Esperanza Ortega from El Rancho de las Rosas. She crossed her arms tight and stared out the window. Okay, this would be a great line to annotate in your book. Why is she saying that she does not belong here? For hours, Esperanza watched the undulating land pass in front of her. Everything seemed to remind her of what she had left behind. The nopales reminded her of Abuelita, who loved to eat the prickly pear cactus sliced and soaked in vinegar and oil. The dogs from small villages that barked and ran after the train reminded her of Marisol, whose dog, Capitan, chased after trains the same way. And every time Esperanza saw a shrine decorated with crosses, flowers, and miniature statues of saints next to the rails, she couldn't help but wonder if it had been someone's father who had died on the tracks, and if somewhere there was another girl who misses him too. Esperanza opened her valise to check on the doll, lifting it out and straightening her clothes. The barefoot peasant girl ran over. Remember, a valise is a small traveling bag, and we saw a picture at the beginning. So Esperanza just opened her bag and took out the brand new doll that Papa was going to give her for her birthday. Mona, she said, and reached up to touch the doll. Esperanza quickly jerked it away and put it back into the valise, covering it with the old clothes. Mona, Mona, said the little girl, running back to her mother, and then she began to cry. Mama and Hortensia both stopped their needles and stared at Esperanza. Mama looked across at the girl's mother. I am sorry for my daughter's bad manners. Esperanza looked at Mama in surprise. Why was she apologizing to these people? She and Mama shouldn't even be sitting in this car. Hortensia looked from one to the other and excused herself. I think I will find Alfonso and Miguel and see if they bought tortillas at the station. All right, you should have some plot annotations on this page, on page 69, about what just happened with Esperanza when a little girl ran up and wanted to touch her doll. What did Esperanza do? Do you think she is a good person or a bad person? Pause the video and annotate on this page. Mama looked at Esperanza. I don't think it would have hurt to let her hold it for a few moments. Mama, she is poor and dirty, said Esperanza. But Mama interrupted. When you scorn these people, you scorn Miguel, Hortensia, and Alfonso. And you embarrass me and yourself. As difficult as it is to accept, our lives are different now. The child kept crying. Her face was so dirty that her tears washed clean streaks down her cheeks. Esperanza suddenly felt ashamed, and the color rose in her face, but she still pushed the valise further under the seat with her feet and turned her body away from Mama. Esperanza tried not to look back at the little girl, but she couldn't help it. She wished she could tell the little girl's mother that she had always given her old toys to the orphanage, but that this doll was special. Besides, the child would have soiled it with her hands. Okay, soiled means to get it dirty, so Esperanza didn't want the little girl to get her doll dirty. Mama reached in her bag and pulled out a ball of blanket yarn. Esperanza, hold out your hands for me. She raised her eyebrows and nodded toward the girl. Esperanza knew exactly what Mama intended to do. They had done it many times before. Mama wrapped the yarn around Esperanza's outstretched hands about 50 times until they were almost covered. Then she slipped a string of yarn through the middle of the loops and tied a tight knot before Esperanza removed her hands. A few inches below the knot, Mama tied another snug knot around all the yarn, forming a head. Then she cut the bottom loops, separated the strands into sections, and braided each section into what looked like arms and legs. She held the yarn doll up, offering it to the little girl. She ran to Mama, smiling, took the doll, and ran back to her own mother's side. The mother whispered into the girl's ear. Shyly, she said, Gracias. Thank you. De nada. You're welcome, said Mama. The woman and the children got off the train at the next stop. Esperanza watched the little girl stop in front of the window, wave to Mama, and smile again. Before she walked away, she made the yarn doll wave goodbye too. Esperanza was glad the girl got off the train and took the silly yarn doll with her. Otherwise, she would have been reminded of her own selfishness and Mama's disapproval for miles to come. We're going to stop right here, and you're about to answer a question. But remember, your exit ticket question is Esperanza is a bad person, and you're going to either say you agree with that she is a bad person, or that you disagree with that. So make sure that you have some evidence marked from these pages that we just read, and you'll be able to use that for your exit ticket.